I've noticed in recent years, and even more recent months, what appears to be a fundamental misunderstanding of the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. Specifically, some people do not appear to understand what it does and does not protect in regards to freedom of speech. So what does the First Amendment actually say? It says, Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or of abridging the freedom of speech, or of the press, or the right of the people to peaceably assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. What does this actually mean as far as freedom of speech? At face value, it would appear to mean just that the federal government cannot actually pass laws restricting it. That's it. A later amendment applies the restrictions to the states as well, meaning that the state governments and lower also can't pass laws restricting freedom of speech. But this actually says nothing more, including doing nothing to require that they protect people's freedom of speech. But how has it been interpreted in the U.S. so far? For that, we can look to uscourts.gov. According to landmark cases listed, the freedoms protected by the First Amendment here include the right not to speak, or more specifically, salute the flag, for students to wear armbands to school to protest war, also the idea that a student keeps at least some degree of free speech protection while attending public school, to use offensive words and phrases to convey political messages, to contribute money to political campaigns, to advertise commercial products and services, and to engage in symbolic speech. It has also been concluded that some things are not protected, including the right to incite actions that would harm others, to make or distribute obscene materials, to burn draft cards, to override administrator objections to print an article in a school newspaper, for students to make an obscene speech at a school-sponsored event, for students to advocate illegal drug use at a school-sponsored event. In addition, the ruling Citizens United versus FEC made it so that the corporations themselves are considered people with at least some level of these rights. All of this combines to form much of what we have in regards to freedom of speech in the U.S. The situation here is one that allows anyone to say basically anything at all, including some of the most hateful and blatantly false statements imaginable, without facing any legal consequences. There are a few exceptions like libel or slander or inciting violence, but generally there's no restriction or legal risk. No legal consequences does not mean, however, that there are no consequences at all. The Constitution does not actually require, for example, that a business grant you access to a platform. It also does not protect you from having other people do or say something that might prevent you from speaking freely. It also doesn't protect you from outraged responses, social pressures, or general criticism. In fact, it essentially does the reverse. It protects criticism and word-based reactions the same way it protects the original speech and any speech that might come after it. That is to say, the criticism has as few restrictions as anything else. The criticism itself can be offensive or insulting, accurate or based on false information, or even no information at all. It does not matter, legally speaking. Additionally, the combination of three things together would mean that corporations and other entities are specifically protected from having to pay you for speech they don't agree with. These three things are the legal right to not speak in protest, as mentioned earlier with saluting the flag, the idea that money equals speech is backed up by decisions that ruled the First Amendment protects campaign donations and spending, and the Citizens United ruling, the decision that corporations and unions and potentially other legal entities are people entitled to similar rights. What this means is that not only does the First Amendment not ensure somebody has the right to be paid for their speech by any given entity, that entity is actually protected from having to pay for speech they disagree with and do not wish to support. Of course, there are plenty of other laws and considerations when it comes to matters in the U.S. The fact that the First Amendment itself doesn't require someone's freedom of speech to be protected from others in most instances doesn't mean that another law can't protect them. It only bars the government from making laws restricting freedom of speech. It does not restrict them from making laws actively protecting it. A contract could also potentially obligate one person or company to pay another, even in situations where they happen to disagree with the messages being presented and paid for. But perhaps I'll get more into that in the future.